Shalom, y'all, and welcome back to our Bible study of the scriptures with a Jewish twist. And you all are certainly about this moment wondering what in the world is going on with this. Well, today we are taking a detour back to the Old Testament, and we are going to discuss the book of Esther and its connection to the celebration of Purim. Purim in the Jewish world is a party. It's a celebration. It's full of happiness and joy, costumes, food, and hamantashen, which, if you keep watching our channel, you might learn how to make. So stay tuned. But it's a time to remember that God is always at work, even when we can't see him. You know what's amazing about the book of Esther? God, the name of God, is not mentioned one time. And yet his fingerprints are all over the story. So what does this mean for us today? How does this ancient tale of this Jewish Persian queen relate to us? Well, I'll argue that the same themes and the same actions that are happening in the book of Esther are still happening today. We have had a 20th century and a 21st century attempt to annihilate the Jews off the face of the earth. And each time the Jewish people has been saved. And it's always by some type of miraculous occurrence. Okay, so let's break down this story. This is a true biblical drama. It's got political intrigue, conspiracies, and also divine reversals. Where are we in Esther? We are in Persia, around the 5th century before the Common Era. The Jewish people are in exile under the rule of King Ahasuerus, who is also known as Xerxes. One day, the king throws a huge party to celebrate all of his accomplishments. And the party probably got a little bit rowdy because he asks for his queen, whose name was Vashti, to come and entertain the guests. But she refused to come. It's not something you do to your king. So, under the advice of his advisors, he banishes Queen Vashti so she can no longer come into his presence. So the king starts looking for a new queen. And here we enter in Hadassah, a young Jewish woman raised by her cousin Mordecai. She's brought into the king's palace, but here's the twist. She hides her identity. She's Jewish, and she takes the name of Esther. The villain in this story, his name is Haman, and he's an Amalekite. He is power hungry, and he hates Mordecai. Mordecai will not bow down to him when he passes on the street. And Haman has a high position in the kingdom of Ahasuerus. Mordecai won't bow down to him, so Haman decides to come up with a plan to destroy and kill all the Jews in the Persian Empire. He convinces King Ahasuerus to sign a decree for their annihilation. This is a moment of crisis. If you were in Esther's shoes, what would you do? Mordecai tells Esther something extremely powerful. And you can find it in chapter 4, verse 14. He tells her, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? This is the turning point for Hadassah, and she now tries to come up with her own plan to save her people. Esther risks her life. She approaches the king uninvited. And through a series of divine reversals, the tables turn. She prepares a feast for the king, and he says, I'll give you anything you ask. The first time, she says, let me have another meal tomorrow with you and Haman as my guests. The second time they have a meal, he asks her the same thing. Whatever you want, I'll give you. And she says, my people, under your decree, are set to be annihilated, and I need you to save them. He gets so angry, he says, who come up with this plan? And she said, it's Haman, the evil Haman. So as the tables are turned, Haman is hanged on the gallows that he constructed himself to hang Mordecai. And the Jewish people are saved. But here is the crazy part. The decree for the destruction of the Jews could not be undone under the laws of Persia. So the king issued a new decree on top of that one, that the Jews were allowed to defend themselves against anyone who would come to try and kill them. And they were successful. That's why Jews celebrate Purim. It's a reminder that even when evil plots against God's people, he always has the final word. The book of Esther never mentions God's name, not one time, but does that mean that he is not in the story? No. His hand is all over this story. Esther happens to be chosen as queen. Mordecai happens to overhear about a plot to kill the king. The king happens to have insomnia one night and reads again what Mordecai had done for him. Haman just happens to fall on the couch of Esther at the wrong time. And that's what led to the king deciding he's got to go. Coincidence? I don't think so. This is what we call divine providence, God working behind the scenes, even when we don't see him. Isn't that what it's like in our own lives? Sometimes we wonder where God is. Why can't I hear him? But just like in Esther, he's always there, moving in ways we don't expect. In many ways, Esther's story foreshadows the Messiah, who for a time is hidden away from Israel, but is still at work behind the scenes to bring redemption to his people. Remember that the Apostle Paul states in Romans chapter 11, God has not rejected Israel, but has instead reconciled the nations to God, and that the future acceptance of Yeshua by Israel will one day be life from the dead. One of the biggest lessons from Esther is about identity and being bold. Esther had to make a choice: stay silent and safe, or step forward and risk everything to stand with her people. And we face similar choices. Are we willing to stand up for truth, even when it's unpopular? Are we willing to identify with Yeshua, even when the world wants us to blend in? Are we willing to stand with Israel? Mordecai's word still rings true. Who knows if you were brought into the kingdom for such a time as this? If you're watching this, I believe it's not by accident. God has called you to be a light, to stand for Him, and to trust that He has a place for you and a reason for you. Purim is a story of divine reversal. Haman builds gallows to hang Mordecai, but Haman ends up hanged on them. The decree to destroy the Jews turns into a victory for them. Mourning and fasting for their fate turns into joy and celebration. Does this sound familiar? The cross looked like a defeat for Yeshua, but it became our greatest victory. Satan thought he won, but through Yeshua's resurrection, he crushed sin and death. The same way Purim turns sorrow into joy, Yeshua turns death to life. Purim is a joyful time, and here's how we celebrate. We read the book of Ester, the whole book, to remind us of God's deliverance. And every time Haman's name is mentioned, everybody shouts and boos and makes lots of noise, so his name is blotted out. We give to the poor just because justice and mercy go hand in hand. We feast and rejoice because we serve a God of joy, and we dress up in costumes and we eat good food. A reminder of how things are hidden in this story. Just like how God's plan is sometimes hidden away, but always at work. No matter what's going on in the world, we can celebrate because God is still in control. So what's the takeaway from the book of Esther? God is always at work, even when we don't see Him. We must stand boldly for truth, just like Esther. And I would say stand boldly for her people as well. We must remember Yeshua brings the ultimate reversal, turning death into life. So what part of Esther's story speaks to you the most? Tell me down in the comments. Let's get a discussion going. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you're blessed by my message today, don't forget to like it, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss anything I'm telling you, and we can continue to study the truth of Yeshua together. So, shalom, y'all, and today, Chag Purim Sameach.
קומי אורי, כי בא אורך, וכבוד אדוני עלייך זרח. קומי אורי, כי בא אורך, וכבוד אדוני עלייך זרח.